Daniel was not just a prophet. He was a man whose life bridged the gap between the earthly and the divine. A faithful servant whose visions reached far beyond his own time. Imagine a young man taken from Jerusalem, thrust into the courts of powerful kings, yet remaining steadfast in his faith. He interpreted dreams that made rulers tremble, predicted the rise and fall of empires, and faced lions with nothing but trust in God. But even all of that was only the beginning of his story. The moment Daniel drew his last breath, something extraordinary began. It was not the end, it was the start of a countdown. A sequence of prophecies that would stretch across centuries and touch the lives of countless people. Think about it. One man's quiet passing would ripple through history, shaping events that no human could have orchestrated. From the fall of mighty Babylon to the rise of Persia, from the conquests of Alexander the Great to the tumultuous struggles in Jerusalem. Daniel's visions were unfolding long after he was gone. And here's the mystery that has fascinated scholars and believers alike. In his final visions, Daniel was instructed to seal certain words until the time of the end. Why seal them? What truths were too profound, too complex, or too far-reaching for his own generation to understand? And now, many centuries later, the world may be beginning to see these sealed prophecies open before our eyes. The question lingers, could we be the generation meant to finally comprehend them? Before we dive deeper into the incredible events that followed Daniel's death, consider the power of one life fully devoted to purpose. Daniel was not perfect. He was human. Yet his commitment, his courage, and his faith positioned him as a vessel for something eternal. And when he died, it was not a quiet exit from the world. It was the moment heaven set plans into motion. Empires would rise, nations would fall, and through it all, Daniel's words would echo, guiding, warning, and inspiring. In this video, we are going to explore 7 astonishing prophecies that began to unfold the moment Daniel passed from this world. You will see how a single life can intersect with history in ways that seem impossible. How visions written on ancient scrolls can reflect events centuries later, and how the faith of one man continues to resonate today. From miraculous returns to Jerusalem, to rulers foretold long before their time, and even the coming of a figure who would change the course of history forever. These are stories that bridge heaven and earth, past and present. So make sure to stay with us until the end, because what Daniel saw is not just history, it is a message, a warning, and a hope that still speaks today. If you enjoy exploring these incredible stories and want to see more content like this, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the fascinating journeys we uncover. Trust me, the story of Daniel is far more than ancient history. It is a roadmap, a revelation, and an adventure that continues to unfold even now. Even as Daniel walked the corridors of kings and faced trials that would have broken the strongest of men, there was a weight upon him that he could scarcely comprehend. His visions were vivid and extraordinary, revealing empires rising and falling, nations trembling under the sway of powerful rulers, and events that stretched far beyond the lifetimes of anyone alive in his day. And yet, amidst these revelations, God gave him a command that would puzzle scholars and believers for millennia: to seal certain prophecies until the time of the end. It was not a punishment, nor a denial of understanding. It was a divine instruction that some truths, though seen by his eyes, were meant to rest in secrecy until the appointed moment arrived. The weight of this knowledge, both seen and hidden, pressed upon Daniel's heart, yet he accepted it with unwavering devotion, fully aware that the unfolding of these prophecies would belong to a generation yet unborn. The act of sealing the words was not merely symbolic. It carried with it an understanding that the human mind, limited by the passage of time and constrained by circumstance, might struggle to grasp the full magnitude of God's plan. Daniel's life was intertwined with immediate history: Babylon, Persia, the devastation of Jerusalem, the exile of his people. But the sealed prophecies stretched into the distant horizon, beyond the immediate rise and fall of kingdoms, reaching into eras that would witness transformations he could never personally observe. The divine timing was precise. The sealed words were a bridge between the known and the unknown, between Daniel's faithful generation and the people who would inherit these revelations centuries later. Each vision he recorded, each interpretation he wrote, was a seed planted in anticipation of a future harvest of understanding, waiting for the moment when history and prophecy would converge in ways even he could not yet fully appreciate. As Daniel prayed, fasting and humbling himself before the Lord, he could feel the tension between revelation and restraint. The world he lived in was turbulent, marked by conquest and destruction. Yet in the quiet moments of his devotion, he glimpsed the threads of a divine tapestry far greater than any earthly kingdom. The sealing of the prophecies was a reminder that faith is not contingent upon immediate comprehension. It is sustained by trust, perseverance, and the assurance that God's plan unfolds exactly as intended. Even without knowing the details, Daniel understood that the time of the end was part of a grander design, a period when human knowledge, understanding, and readiness would align with the truths he had been privileged to witness. The sealed scrolls were more than hidden words. They were a promise that revelation would arrive in perfect timing, neither too early to be misinterpreted nor too late to fulfill their purpose. The implications of these sealed prophecies were profound, reaching beyond Daniel's personal experience into the lives of his contemporaries and his nation. Though he could see the immediate threats, enemies at the gates, kings issuing decrees, exiles longing for home, he also glimpsed the eventual restoration, the miraculous returns, and the spiritual transformations that would reshape the destiny of his people. These were not mere political shifts. They were divine orchestrations, carefully timed and meticulously recorded so that generations to come could witness the precision of God's hand in history. The sealed words represented a future that would test faith, patience, and discernment, challenging those who came after Daniel to seek understanding, not solely from the surface of events, but from the deeper currents of purpose and providence flowing through time. Even in his final days, Daniel's reflections were marked by a mixture of awe and solemn responsibility. The sealing of the prophecies was both a weight and a gift, a reminder that insight comes with stewardship, and that knowledge, when entrusted, carries the responsibility of trust and fidelity. He wrote with clarity, yet he wrote with restraint, knowing that some revelations would remain dormant until a generation equipped to comprehend them arose. His role was not to ensure the immediate fulfillment of every vision, but to preserve the integrity of the message, to act as a faithful witness who recorded what was seen, who prayed for his people, and who trusted that divine timing would illuminate the words when the moment was right. In this way, Daniel became more than a prophet. He became a custodian of future truth, a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, carrying messages that would ripple across centuries, waiting for the appointed time to awaken and inspire those ready to receive them. And so, the sealed prophecies remained, resting quietly in scrolls, waiting for the unfolding of history to align with divine timing. Empires rose and fell, cities were destroyed and rebuilt, kings and conquerors came and went, and yet the sealed words persisted, untouched by the passage of generations, but alive with the potential to illuminate the future. Daniel's life, filled with courage, prayer, and devotion, was a testament to the enduring power of faith in the unseen. The sealed prophecies were a reminder that some truths are revealed not when we demand them, nor when we think ourselves ready, but when the world itself reaches the stage set for their unveiling. And in that quiet promise, Daniel's vision extended beyond the horizon of his own life, reaching into the hearts of those who would one day read his words, study his scrolls, and recognize that the time of the end is not merely an abstract concept, it is a living reality, unfolding in its appointed season, just as God intended. As Daniel knelt in prayer, his heart heavy with the burdens of his people and the weight of exile, he poured out every thought, every plea, and every hope to the God he served with unwavering faith. The city of Jerusalem lay in ruins, its walls shattered, the temple reduced to smoldering ash, and yet Daniel saw beyond the immediate devastation. His prayers were not mere requests for relief or protection. They were a deep communion with the divine, a recognition that the future of his people depended not on human strength, but on God's perfect timing. He confessed the sins of the nation, not for judgment alone, but with a hope that mercy might flow through the generations, and that restoration would one day follow the desolation. It was in this context of fervent prayer that the visions began to unfold, revealing events that would span centuries, reaching far beyond Daniel's own lifetime, and painting a panorama of history in vivid, prophetic strokes. Through these visions, Daniel saw the return of the Jewish exiles to their homeland, a promise that had been whispered through earlier prophets yet seemed almost impossible amid the despair of captivity. He envisioned families preparing to journey back to Jerusalem, carrying their hopes, their memories, and the enduring faith of their ancestors. Though Daniel himself would not live to witness this return, his prayers became the spiritual foundation for it, aligning with the divine orchestration that would one day see King Cyrus of Persia issue a decree allowing the Jews to rebuild their temple and reclaim their city. This event was not just a political maneuver. It was a fulfillment of prophecy that had been written centuries earlier, a manifestation of divine precision in timing and purpose, where the plans of rulers and the prayers of the faithful intersected in extraordinary ways. Yet Daniel's visions did not stop with restoration. They reached into the unfolding of empires, chronicling the rise and fall of nations with remarkable clarity. He saw the mighty Persian Empire, its influence stretching across continents, its kings commanding vast armies and wealth, and yet destined to be challenged by a new force from the west. This force appeared as a swift, unstoppable figure, a great horned goat whose conquests would astonish the world, breaking the dominance of Persia and ushering in the era of Greece. The angelic explanations that accompanied these visions revealed the identity of this conqueror, Alexander the Great, whose campaigns would sweep across cities and kingdoms with unprecedented speed and precision. Daniel's eyes, through divine revelation, perceived the movements of armies, the strategies of generals, and the sudden shifts that would follow Alexander's untimely death, events that would fragment his empire into 4 distinct realms, each ruled by one of his generals. These prophecies were not merely about political dominion. They were a tapestry in which the fate of nations and the destiny of God's people were intertwined. Daniel saw that while rulers and empires wielded power, the hand of God guided history with intention, ensuring that promises made long before would be fulfilled at precisely the right time. He witnessed the rebuilding of the temple not as a grand display of wealth or artistry but as a symbol of faith restored, a spiritual anchor for a people who had endured decades of displacement and suffering. The temple became more than stone and mortar. It was a testimony to perseverance, prayer, and divine faithfulness, a stage upon which later prophecies would find their fulfillment, culminating in events that would surpass even the most extraordinary moments of his visions. Even the rise and fall of empires, as terrifying and powerful as they appeared, were woven into a larger narrative that emphasized God's sovereignty. From Persia to Greece, from the swift conquests of Alexander to the divisions among his generals, Daniel's visions presented history not as random chaos but as a sequence of divinely ordained events, each step carefully laid out and interlinked. The precision with which these empires rose and fell, the accuracy of their timelines, and the fulfillment of specific details centuries after they were recorded, highlighted the extraordinary nature of Daniel's role as both prophet and witness. His insight extended beyond the immediate challenges of exile into a sweeping panorama where political power, divine intervention, and human courage converge in a grand narrative that continues to captivate scholars, believers, and historians alike. What makes Daniel's story compelling is the interplay between his prayers and his visions, the way his devotion shaped the unfolding of events even after his death. His intercessions were not passive. They were active conduits through which divine plans were set into motion, influencing the return of exiles, the rebuilding of sacred spaces, and the rise and fall of empires that defined the ancient world. Every empire, from Persia to Greece, every general, every king, became part of a narrative larger than themselves, a narrative that Daniel glimpsed through divine revelation and recorded with meticulous care. In this way, his prophecies created a bridge across time, connecting the spiritual perseverance of a man in exile with the tangible outcomes that centuries later would astonish the world and reaffirm the intricate orchestration of history under divine guidance. Ultimately, Daniel's prayers and visions demonstrate that faith, patience, and devotion can transcend immediate circumstances and influence outcomes far beyond what any single person might expect. Through his eyes, the exile, the devastation, and the uncertainty of the present became the backdrop for a future filled with promise, restoration, and purpose. From the return of the Jewish people to Jerusalem, to the rebuilding of the temple, to the rise and fall of empires like Persia and Greece, Daniel's insights reveal a world in which divine foresight and human experience are inseparable, illustrating a timeless lesson that even in moments of despair, the faithful witness and prayerful heart can align with forces far greater than themselves, shaping the course of history in ways that endure across centuries. As the centuries unfolded, Daniel's visions continued to illuminate events that would challenge the faith and resilience of his people in ways that few could have anticipated. Yet through them, a story of hope, courage, and divine orchestration emerged. Long after the Persian and Greek empires had risen and fallen, a new chapter loomed over Jerusalem, one marked by oppression, sacrilege, and the testing of devotion. Daniel foresaw a ruler whose ambition and cruelty would shake the very foundations of Israel, a king who would rise from the fragmented legacy of Alexander's empire and seek not just dominion, but the eradication of faith itself. This ruler, Antiochus of Epiphanes, appeared in Daniel's visions as a figure whose face was fierce, whose plans were cunning, and whose heart was bent on controlling every aspect of the lives of God's people. His rise was both swift and terrifying. And Daniel, though separated by centuries, saw the dark cloud of persecution that would descend upon Jerusalem and the Holy Temple, a place that had been painstakingly rebuilt after the exile. Antiochus' initial actions seemed subtle, almost administrative, as he installed compliant priests and attempted to assert authority over temple affairs. But his intentions were far more sinister. Daniel's visions revealed that these early intrusions were only a prelude to a storm of oppression and desecration, a time when obedience to God would come at the cost of life itself. When Antiochus turned his attention fully toward Jerusalem, he brought devastation in its wake. His forces entered the city with violence, killing and intimidating anyone who dared resist, desecrating the sacred temple by erecting an altar to Zeus and offering sacrifices forbidden by God's law. Daniel's words, recorded centuries earlier, describe this moment with startling clarity. A ruler skilled in schemes, oppressing the holy people and corrupting the sanctuary. A king whose actions would make the faithful question how God's promises could endure in such darkness. Yet even in the shadow of this oppression, Daniel's visions were not devoid of hope. Among the faithful, courage began to flicker in quiet, determined hearts that refused to submit. The story of Mattathias, a priest, and his family, who took a stand against the profanation of their faith, exemplified the living fulfillment of Daniel's foresight. They did not seek personal glory or revenge. Instead, they fought to preserve the covenant, the traditions, and the identity of their people. Their rebellion, which sparked the Maccabean revolt, became a powerful testament to the enduring truth of Daniel's prophecy. Against overwhelming odds, these faithful warriors led a movement that would reclaim Jerusalem, cleanse the temple from the marks of desecration, and restore the sacred rituals that Antiochus had tried to erase. The challenges were immense, as years of persecution had left deep scars, and the temple itself bore the evidence of defilement and destruction. Yet the resolve of those who clung to Daniel's vision could not be extinguished. The most remarkable moment of Daniel's prophecy came to life when the Maccabees prepared to relight the temple's golden menorah, the lamp that symbolized divine presence and guidance. They found only a single small jar of pure oil, enough to last for 1 day. Yet when it was kindled, the flame burned for 8 days, a miracle that would be remembered for generations as the festival of Hanukkah. Daniel had written of the sanctuary being cleansed after a period of defilement, and here it unfolded in vivid reality. This miracle was not merely a physical sign but a symbol of God's faithfulness, a confirmation that even in the midst of human cruelty and oppression, the divine plan could not be thwarted. The light of the menorah, sustained against all odds, represented the enduring presence of God among his people, echoing Daniel's message that no force, no empire, and no tyrant could extinguish what had been divinely ordained. Daniel's foresight extended beyond the immediate victory, portraying the spiritual and moral dimensions of these events. Antiochus' tyranny was more than political oppression. It was a spiritual test, a time when the people were challenged to choose faith over fear, obedience over comfort, and hope over despair. The Maccabean revolt, inspired by this divine promise, illustrated the profound connection between human courage and divine providence, showing that even when circumstances seem overwhelmingly dark, the faithful can act as agents of restoration, fulfilling visions that had been sealed long before their time. Through Daniel, the oppressed could see that suffering had purpose, that resistance had meaning, and that God's faithfulness extended across generations, bridging the centuries between prophecy and fulfillment. Even as the story of Antiochus and the Maccabees unfolded, the pattern of history revealed in Daniel's visions remained clear. Empires rise, rulers oppress, and yet divine providence ensures that hope survives and restoration occurs. The festival of Hanukkah stands not only as a commemoration of miraculous survival, but as a vivid reminder that the visions Daniel received were not abstract symbols, but living prophecies, offering guidance, courage, and perspective to all who encounter them. Through the Maccabees, Daniel's words took on tangible reality, demonstrating that faith coupled with action can transform oppression into triumph, darkness into light, and despair into enduring hope. In this way, the persecution under Antiochus, the desecration of the temple, and the miraculous preservation and purification of the holy sanctuary were not just events in isolation. They were threads in a larger tapestry that Daniel had foreseen, a tapestry in which the resilience of God's people, the unfolding of divine promises, and the triumph of faith over tyranny intertwined. Daniel's visions reminded successive generations that even in the midst of suffering and uncertainty, God's plan was active, precise, and ultimately victorious, providing both a historical account and a spiritual lesson that continues to inspire those who seek understanding of the mysteries he faithfully recorded centuries before they came to pass. Long after the miracles of the Maccabees and the flickering lamps of Hanukkah had settled into memory, Daniel's visions continued to cast their shadow across history, pointing toward events of even greater significance. Events that would alter the spiritual destiny of the world. Among the scrolls he had been commanded to seal, Daniel saw the coming of a figure unlike any earthly king, a ruler whose kingdom would not be marked by iron, conquest, or worldly power, but by divine authority, wisdom, and a mission to restore humanity's relationship with God. This figure, the Messiah, would be born in a time of relative obscurity, in a small town under the dominion of an empire that seemed all-powerful and indifferent. Yet his arrival would fulfill a chain of events foretold centuries earlier, bridging prophecy and history with an unbroken thread of divine precision. Daniel's writings spoke of this anointed one as the Son of Man, a title laden with significance, a sign of a kingdom that would not fade, a rule that would transcend human empires, and a mission that would touch the deepest needs of humanity's soul. The anticipation of the Messiah's coming was intertwined with a vision of Jerusalem, a city whose fate mirrored the trials and promises of God's covenant people. Daniel saw the city under siege, its people facing oppression and ultimate judgment if they failed to recognize the divine plan unfolding within their midst. In the fullness of time, the Messiah appeared, not as a conqueror or a general, but as a teacher, a healer, and a redeemer, fulfilling the timeline that Daniel's prophecies had carefully delineated. Every detail, from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the period of 70 weeks understood as symbolic sets of years, pointed toward the precise moment when the Anointed One would walk among the people. Carrying with him the authority of heaven, he spoke of love, forgiveness, and justice, and through his teachings, miracles, and ultimate sacrifice, he became the living fulfillment of Daniel's visions, bringing clarity to the mysteries that had remained sealed for centuries. Yet even as the Messiah brought hope and salvation, Daniel's visions encompassed the reality of human opposition and the consequences of rejecting divine guidance. Jerusalem, the very city Daniel had seen in visions of destruction and restoration, became a place of confrontation between enduring faith and oppressive power. After the Messiah's ministry, teachings, and sacrificial death, the city faced judgment as foretold, as the Roman Empire, the fourth kingdom Daniel had once described with iron strength and unyielding control, laid siege Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Romans, acting through political ambition and military might, destroyed the temple that had stood as the center of worship, scattering the people and fulfilling the prophecies that had been sealed until that time. This event, while tragic, aligned precisely with the visions Daniel had recorded, demonstrating that even the darkest trials were part of a larger divine plan that had been unfolding for centuries. Daniel's writings illuminated the paradox of divine sovereignty and human agency, showing that even amidst suffering, despair, and apparent defeat, God's purpose was at work, guiding history toward fulfillment. The destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans was not merely an act of war, but a manifestation of the consequences foretold when humanity strayed from covenantal faithfulness. And simultaneously, a confirmation of the truth of Daniel's prophecies. The scattering of the Jewish people, which would lead to the diaspora lasting nearly 2 millennia, was a vivid testament to the precision and endurance of divine revelation. Every upheaval, every conquest, every moment of loss mirrored the visions Daniel had seen in the quiet of his prayers, the intensity of his fasting, and the depth of his communion with God, emphasizing that the unfolding of history was never random but intricately guided by a higher wisdom. In the midst of these tumultuous events, the figure of the Messiah remained central, embodying the hope that Daniel had seen centuries before. Jesus Christ, as he is known in the Christian tradition, became the tangible connection between prophecy and reality, showing that divine timing and human history intersect in ways beyond immediate comprehension. His ministry, death, and resurrection were not only a fulfillment of Daniel's vision of the Anointed One, but also a profound revelation of the eternal kingdom that would rise like a stone cut without human hands. A kingdom that could never be destroyed, impervious to empires that came and went. Daniel's foresight revealed that even when earthly powers seemed absolute, the divine plan operated on a different scale, where ultimate justice, redemption, and restoration were assured. Through this lens, the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD was both an ending and a beginning. An ending to the temple as the focal point of physical worship, and a beginning of the expansion of faith that would transcend geographic, cultural, and temporal boundaries. The scattering of the people, the trials they endured, and the persistence of hope were all part of the continuum Daniel had envisioned, demonstrating that divine promises are not constrained by time, geography, or circumstance. Every fulfilled prophecy underscored the reliability of God's word and the importance of discernment, faith, and patience, teaching that understanding often comes after events unfold, and revelation can span generations before its full significance is realized. As Daniel's prophecies concerning the Messiah and the subsequent destruction of Jerusalem unfolded, a larger narrative became clear. Human history is a tapestry woven with divine intention, where the rise and fall of empires, the suffering of faithful people, and the appearance of the Anointed One converge to reveal a plan that transcends immediate understanding. Daniel's visions connected the past, the present, and the future, showing that each trial, each moment of oppression, and each act of courage was part of a grand design, demonstrating that hope and divine sovereignty persist even when the world seems at its most chaotic. His writings offer a lens through which to view history not as a series of random events, but as a carefully orchestrated story, in which the faithfulness of God and the unfolding of His purposes are evident across centuries, culminating in the arrival of the Messiah and the enduring lesson that, despite destruction and adversity, God's kingdom endures forever. As we reflect on the extraordinary life of Daniel and the unfolding of his prophecies across history, it becomes clear that his visions were not confined to the distant past. Daniel, a prophet whose insight spanned centuries, was commanded by God to seal certain revelations until the time of the end, a period when humanity would be prepared to understand and witness events that were once hidden from view. For generations, scholars and faithful believers studied his writings, pondering the timing and significance of the sealed prophecies. Often seeing patterns only in hindsight, they observed the rise and fall of empires, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the coming of the Messiah, and the judgment upon nations that had turned from God, marveling at the precision with which Daniel's visions foretold history. And yet, Daniel hinted that his message was far from complete, that some aspects would only become clear when the world reached a stage of knowledge, connectivity, and awareness that his own generation could not comprehend. Today, we find ourselves living in an era that mirrors the conditions Daniel foresaw as the time of the end. Knowledge has expanded exponentially, with discoveries and technologies reshaping every aspect of life. Information travels across continents in mere seconds. Satellites orbit the globe, and artificial intelligence is transforming how we interact with the world. People move across borders with unprecedented speed, and societies are interconnected in ways previously unimaginable. The rapid pace of change, the flow of ideas, and the explosion of learning fulfill, in many, the description Daniel provided when he wrote that many would run to and fro, and that knowledge would increase. These developments suggest that we may indeed be living in a generation uniquely positioned to perceive the truths that were once hidden in the sealed scrolls. Moreover, the reestablishment of Israel in 1948, followed by the recapture of Jerusalem in 1967, represents a fulfillment of ancient prophecy that aligns with Daniel's visions. For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people had been scattered across the world, living in exile and longing for the restoration of their homeland. Daniel had foreseen not only the trials and dispersions, but also the miraculous return of God's people to their city, a sign that the divine plan continued to unfold across millennia. The revival of Jerusalem, the central point of Daniel's prophecies, signals a pivotal moment in history, reinforcing the idea that the sealed prophecies are entering the stage of their final revelation. These events serve as both confirmation and encouragement, showing that God's timeline is precise and that what was once hidden is gradually being unveiled. As we look at the present, the world is characterized by uncertainty, moral complexity, and unprecedented global challenges. Yet, in the midst of these difficulties, Daniel's life and visions remind us of the overarching sovereignty of God. Every empire, every conflict, and every transformation that Daniel recorded points to a divine narrative in which human history is neither random nor meaningless. The lessons of faithfulness, courage, and persistence resonate strongly today, as individuals and societies confront rapid change, ethical dilemmas, and moments of both hope and despair. Just as Daniel's prayers and visions shaped the faith and actions of his contemporaries, so too do they provide guidance, perspective, and inspiration for modern generations navigating the complexities of our era. The possibility that Daniel's sealed prophecies are now unfolding carries both awe and responsibility. It invites reflection on how we engage with the world, how we interpret signs, and how we align our lives with enduring principles of truth and justice. The increase in knowledge, the global movement of people and ideas, and the reestablishment of ancient centers of faith suggest that we may be witnesses to the fulfillment of prophecies that were hidden for thousands of years. This perspective encourages vigilance, humility, and discernment, as well as a recognition that while human events may appear chaotic or unpredictable, they exist within a larger, divinely orchestrated framework. In the end, Daniel's legacy is more than a record of historical events or predictions. It is a testament to the enduring power of faith, the reliability of divine promises, and the certainty that God's plan encompasses every generation. As we live in this extraordinary age of rapid knowledge and global transformation, we are challenged to observe carefully, to understand the signs of our times, and to act in accordance with the wisdom and courage exemplified by Daniel. His life reminds us that even in the face of uncertainty, divine purpose persists, and that history, faith, and prophecy are interwoven in ways that continue to unfold before our eyes. Thank you for taking the time to explore the remarkable story of Daniel and the unfolding of his prophecies with me. If this video inspired you, gave you hope, or deepened your understanding of these ancient yet profoundly relevant visions, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content exploring history, prophecy, and the lessons we can apply in our lives today. Share this with friends or family who would find encouragement in Daniel's story, and join the conversation in the comments below to reflect on which part of Daniel's prophecy resonates most with you in today's world. As we witness knowledge increasing, borders becoming more connected, and the ancient prophecies coming alive, let us stay attentive, faithful, and inspired, knowing that the message Daniel preserved for us centuries ago may very well be revealing its meaning in our own time. Like, subscribe, and share, because the story of Daniel is not just history, it is a living guide for understanding the unfolding world and the enduring power of God's plan.